Hey everyone, it's your buddy back again with another exciting fanfic, which is what if Tsunade and Minato were Naruto's parents. Part 2. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. Shizune looked a little confused, but Jiraiya and Tsunade understood his words quite well. For the young Kunoichi Sake, Hiruzen explained further. It's simple. If the people of Konoha knew that Naruto was Minato and Tsunade's son, they would treat him like royalty and spoil him rotten. He would become a spoiled and arrogant child that would believe that just because he is the heir of a prestigious clan, he'd be handed power and strength on a silver platter and not value hard work, determination and training. He might even look down on others and believe he is their better by default. There'd even be several factions in Konoha that would seek to use his future power and influence. Hiruzen let out an annoyed scoff. The most notable would be Danzo. Jiraiya's face grew serious and Tsunade even felt a small snarl coming along at the back of her throat from the mere mention of the old war hawk. He has already requested to give him custody of the child containing the Kyuubi so that he can train him to become a shinobi. I'm certain under his care Naruto would become an emotionless boy who would answer only to Danzo himself, especially if he knew who his parents are and the political and business impact that he'd carry. Take everything regarding Naruto into account and Danzo could potentially have all of Konoha under his control as a potential Hokage. I know that you all see this as a disastrous scenario. Shizune couldn't help but mentally shudder at the thought of her godson helping the old warmonger position himself into such power. His reputation wasn't the best, and from what her master told her, the further away he was from Naruto the better. Like I'd ever let that one-eyed bastard even touch a hair on my Naru-chan. I'll rip out his remaining eye and arm myself if he even thinks about it. Tsunade carefully and angrily muttered back, hoping to not wake up Naruto. That is why it's best that you both leave the village for now. It'd be best if you keep a low profile. We can't risk any suspicion before we're able to properly handle it, Hiruzen responded. Tsunade simply nodded before she spoke. Is there anything else, sensei? I'd like to get out of here as soon as I can. Yes, there is something I like to say. Now, as Jiraiya already knows, before Minato died he left me as executor to the Namikaze estate, in which he has named Naruto as heir to the Namikaze family fortune as well as everything that he owned. Won't the council try and seize it for themselves since they don't think Minato-sama has an heir? Shizune asked. They've already tried, but I overruled them. Even if they don't know Naruto will inherit everything when he's older, I still have absolute say over what happens to Minato's possessions. Speaking of which, who'll manage the businesses that belong to the Namikazes, since I doubt you will? Tsunade asked Hiruzen. They'll be handled by Seiwa Genji. He helped Minato's father manage them and continued to overlook them when he died and Minato inherited it all. He was a good and loyal friend to the family, so we don't have to worry. Everything will continue to run correctly, but he'll be left in the dark about Naruto in case there's a chance he might let his identity slip or someone trying to force information out of him. I believe you should also know that Minato has requested in his will that I have all your debts paid off through the Namikaze fortune. Tsunade and Shizune felt shock overtake them. And before you try and refuse, you don't need to worry about negatively affecting Naruto's inheritance. Even as high as your debts are, they won't make that big of a dent in the family fortune. Minato also set up a trust fund for Naruto which will be paid monthly to you and should be enough to allow you three to live simple but comfortable lives even if you travel around, which seems like what you'll be doing, Hiruzen ended. After a few moments, Tsunade and Shizune got over their shock, and as much as the Senju hated to admit, she was grateful for Minato getting rid of all her debts and taking care of them all. However, she would never truly forgive him for turning their son into a sacrifice regardless of how noble or selfless his reasons were. Well, if that's all, sensei, I think that once Shizune and I get everything we need to take care of Naruto, we'll leave tonight, Tsunade said, all while gently rocking her son. There is one last thing I would like to say, Tsunade, Hiruzen started, causing Tsunade to raise an eyebrow, I know that you have good reasons to keep Naruto away from Konoha, but I would like you to consider allowing him to become a shinobi of Konoha when he's old enough. Tsunade looked ready to argue. Before you speak against it, you have to remember that the blood of some of the greatest shinobi in the world, including yourself, runs through Naruto's veins. Following the path of a shinobi is instilled in him, and I highly doubt that you could stop him even if you tried to. Naruto has the potential to become as great a shinobi as your grandfather, great uncle, and his father, maybe even greater, and he'll need the support of Konoha behind him to help him with whatever enemies he will face. He'll need to be here to claim and protect his fortune and other heirlooms like the Hiraishin scroll anyway, so building a connection would be ideal for everyone. At the very least, he'll be able to make sure his property doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Tsunade frowned, but she had to admit he had a point. After a few minutes of carefully thinking, Tsunade spoke. I won't make any promises of his future in Konoha, but I'll think about it. We will definitely be back to claim his inheritance, though, so a decision will be made by then. That's all I ask, Hiruzen replied with a smile. I think I'll head out as well, sensei. It's best that I travel and reconnect with my spy network. We have to keep an ear out for anyone that might catch wind of anything related to Naruto or Hime. It'd be smart to look for any threats in the future too. Jiraiya said. Hiruzen offered them all a smile. Very well, I wish you both the best of luck. Don't worry, we'll keep you posted on how we're doing, Tsunade assured. 3 hours later, when the night sky had fully loomed over Konoha, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizune and Naruto snuck out of the village with none being the wiser. As they left, the Sandaime was looking out the window of his office and at the star-filled night heavens. I look forward to the day of your return, Naruto, for I have no doubt we'll be seeing great things coming from you, just like your mother, father, and your ancestors, he thought with a slight smile. He then turned to look at the pictures of his predecessors, all of them sharing the same blood as the whiskered blonde. After a few minutes of silent staring and thinking, Hiruzen decided to head home and finally get some rest. N.A. Well, now that another chapter complete. In the next few chapters it will be about Naruto growing up with Tsunade and Shizune and Jiraiya whenever he pops in, and it'd be a couple of chapters before Naruto goes to Konoha. Also, before anyone starts stating in your reviews saying not to do a chapter for every year, I will be doing only a couple of chapters on certain years, like when he 1 or 2, then in the next chapter we'll skip to when he 5 or 6, and another when he 8 or 10. I haven't fully decided on what to do yet, but Naruto will go to Konoha when he 12. Ba, 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 babbled baby Naruto as he finished eating his mashed banana with his fingers and got about half of it around his face and on his bib. Good boy Naru-chan, you ate all you bananas. Although you got at least half it on your face and clothes, you little devil you, cooed Tsunade as she went to pick up Naruto out of his high chair and smiled at him. Ma, 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 babbled Naruto as he saw his mother coming to pick him up, to which he giggled as she lifted him out of his chair. You're a messy little boy, aren't you, Naru-chan? Tsunade continued to coo as she looked down at her messy son, who just giggled more, then put one of his fingers in his mouth to make himself look innocent and more adorable. She just shook her head and smiled slightly. You're just like your father, a real charmer when you want to be. Naruto laughed and clapped his small hands together as if agreeing with her. Shizune, I'm going into the next room to change Naru-chan out of his messy clothes. Will you please clean his high chair up and put it away while I'm doing that? Tsunade called as she went to the next room. Certainly, Tsunade-sensei, Shizune answered from the kitchen. As Tsunade was changing Naruto out of his dirty clothes, she thought about when she left Konoha and when Naruto was born. During that time not much had happened, since Tsunade made sure to keep a low profile. This past year she had traveled mainly around Fire Country and the other smaller nations with baby Naruto and Shizune. They would stay in small villages, towns, or cities for a few months before they would move off again, not wanting to attract unwanted attention. When they traveled or was not in the privacy of her current home, she would put a special henge over herself and Shizune to change their appearance to everyone but Naruto so that he would not get scared or confused when he did not recognize them. This was to make sure that if someone was looking for them, they would be unable to know where to start looking. As they traveled to different places, she would offer her services as a healer to people with different illness or injuries. Though she did not need the money since the money Minato had set up for Sarutobi to send them through her slug summons was enough to allow them to live simple but comfortable lives. Tsunade did it because it made her happy and gave her something to do when not caring or playing with Naruto. Also during the year, Naruto was growing up to be a very active child. He loved to play around in his playpen with his different toys, and when he started crawling about 3 months ago, he could hardly stay in the same place for too long. He would also grab anything he could get his hands on and that he could put in his mouth. On more than one occasion, Tsunade and Shizune had just barely stopped Naruto from swallowing or choking a coin, a marble, and other small objects. He also had a knack for getting into trouble. On several occasions, Naruto somehow climbed up onto a chair, table, or even a shelf whenever he saw something he wanted on them. This resulted in him nearly falling off and getting hurt each time, but thankfully Tsunade or Shizune were able to catch him and keep him from getting hurt. Though Tsunade nearly had a heart attack each and every time it happened. It was after the second one of those incidents that both Shizune and she decided that one of them would always have Naruto within eyesight for their own peace of mind. After Tsunade finished changing Naruto, she lifted him up in her arms and cooed, "Now that you're nice and clean again, you're a handsome boy. Aren't you, my little Naru-chan?" Naruto just replied by squealing in delight and clapping his hand again. Tsunade then went out to the main room where Shizune was just finishing putting away Naruto's high chair. She then went to sit down on a chair and began to loosen up her robes and lowered the strap to her bra to expose her left breast. She then brought Naruto up to it so that he could start feeding. After which Shizune then went to another chair opposite Tsunade and began to read a new medical book she had recently bought. It was just about 5 minutes after Tsunade began that someone suddenly came through the open window that was next to her. With Tsunade so engrossed with feeding Naruto and Shizune in her book, both of them failed to notice the intruder. When the intruder saw Tsunade's current manifestation and what she was doing, he suddenly let out a large cry. Ah! After which the intruder was sent across the room by a massive nosebleed and hit the wall hard, knocking the intruder out. When the two women heard the cry and the thud of the intruder hitting the wall, they both immediately sprung into action. Tsunade went into a protective stance covering Naruto, who was crying after being interrupted from his feeding time, while Shizune went into an offensive stance with her senbon needles out and ready. When the two women looked over at the unconscious intruder, Tsunade growled under her breath angrily and began muttering curses upon seeing whom their guest was. Said intruder was twitching a little with blood coming from his nose and a very perverted smile on his face and drool coming from his mouth. Of all of people and of all times, Tsunade said sourly as her right eye twitched several times, he had to show up unannounced. Jiraiya-sama, Shizune said a bit worriedly as she went over to the now unconscious Toad Hermit. Shizune, leave him until I at least finish feeding Naru-chan. The last thing I need is that perverted toad watching me as I'm feeding the baby, Tsunade angrily said as she tried to calm down the still crying Naruto. Shizune just nodded in acknowledgement and went into the kitchen to get a few things to treat the Toad Hermit while her sensei finished. 20 minutes later, after Jiraiya had regained consciousness and his composure, long after Tsunade had fully fixed her robes, Tsunade tried to force Jiraiya to clean up the mess he made, but Shizune volunteered to do herself, saying that she didn't want to risk Naruto catching anything from him. Tsunade was sitting at a table with Naruto being cradled in her arms and Jiraiya was across from them. He was smiling as he looked at them since the memory of Tsunade breastfeeding Naruto was still fresh on his mind. "Why are you here anyway, Jiraiya?" Tsunade inquired with a slight frown. She was still a bit annoyed with him for arriving unannounced in the way he did. Can't a man come every now and then to visit his godson? Asked the smiling sage. Not in the way you do, Tsunade deadpanned. Ah, Haim, don't say that, you make me feel unwanted. Besides, if I had announced my arrival, then I wouldn't have been treated with the heavenly sight that I saw not long ago, Jiraiya replied, grinning like no tomorrow. The boy's living a genuine privilege that is not given to just anyone. I envy his good fortune. Tsunade frowned and snarled at Jiraiya, not missing the perverted meanings behind his statements, while Shizune looked at the older man in disgust. If I wasn't holding Naru-chan right now, you would be halfway flying to Suna right now, Tsunade said through narrowed eyes. Jiraiya just chuckled nervously and decided to change the subject as to why he was really here. Alright Haim, all joking aside, you're right, there is a reason why I'm here, Jiraiya spoke, all humor leaving his face. Immediately Shizune and Tsunade straightened up and began to listen intently to what Jiraiya had to say. As you both know, I left the village to reconnect with my spy network to keep an ear open for any news about anything that may concern you or the Gaki here, Jiraiya said while motioning to Naruto. Both of them nodded since they knew this, although Tsunade did frown at Naruto being called a Gaki but decided to let it slide for now. Currently the other villages are watching Konoha closely to see how badly the military strength was hit during the Kyuubi attack and the loss of Minato. Thankfully Sensei's been able to keep the other villages in the dark about how badly Konoha was hurt, so as far as the other villages are concerned, Konoha is still strong. Plus, Konoha's alliance with Suna is also another thing to make the other villages hesitant to try anything. So I don't believe that they'll try to attack the village, Jiraiya informed, to which Tsunade just nodded for him to continue. Also, no one knows about you having Naruto, so I don't think you have to worry about anyone coming after him anytime soon. But you should still lay low like you've been doing, since we don't want any trouble, especially at this point and time, to which Tsunade was in complete agreement. Another thing I learned just last month, some new group is coming out. They're keeping below the radar so to not attract attention and are highly secretive. From what my informants tell me, they'll be big trouble in a couple of years. What do you mean by that? Asked Tsunade. The group is currently made up of 6 missing nin and not your run-of-the-mill missing nin. These guys are all S-class missing nin, replied Jiraiya. This shocked both the women present. S-class missing nin was the highest types of ninjas there were, except for few others who was credited with being given a double S-class rank, those being Tsunade's grandfather Senju Hashirama, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Hashirama's arch-rival and nemesis Uchiha Madara, and Naruto's father, Namikaze Minato. It made Tsunade especially worried since shinobi of that caliber rarely ever try to work together, since they usually end up fighting or killing one another. The only way for any of them to willing work together would be if they were being led by someone stronger than any of them. Tsunade was worried because anyone that was able to get 5 other S-class missing nin working together would have to be incredibly powerful. Do you know who the members are? Tsunade asked. I know one member, but that's it. The rest I don't, since like I said, the group is highly secretive, responded Jiraiya. Who is the member that you know of? Our old teammate, Orochimaru. Tsunade frowned upon hearing this. Although she was not there when Orochimaru's treasonous acts were revealed by Sarutobi, she had heard about them not long after. Although she had severed her ties with Konoha, his betrayal still hurt her. He was still her friend at one point. I'm surprised he would be willing to work with others again, considering he usually prefers to work alone, spoke Tsunade. My guess is it was a matter of convenience. They most likely protected him and helped him elude the Oinin and us. But knowing Orochimaru, he'll most likely betray them like he did us when it suits him best. Tsunade just nodded her head in agreement. So what exactly do they call themselves? Surely their group goes by some kind of name, and what exactly do they want, since S-class missing nins wouldn't really work together without some kind of reason? Shizune asked. They call themselves the Akatsuki, and you can recognize them by what they wear. They all dress in the similar outfit. Each member wears dark cloaks with red clouds with a red interior, a chin-high collar, and wear a conical straw hat with small spike-like balls hanging down to cover their faces. As for their plans, I don't really know for certain, but from what my sources tell me, they're going after Jinchuriki. To be more precise, they're after the bijus inside the Jinchuriki, Jiraiya answered, shocking both women and causing Tsunade to hold onto Naruto tightly. Or why you certain, Jiraiya? Asked a worried Tsunade, to which the sage just nodded. My advice, Tsunade, is that if you ever see anyone who matches the Akatsuki description, get out and run as far away as you can. Although you could possibly take on and beat one of them, but these guys travel in pairs. When you see one, the other is not far behind, and not even you could take on two S-class nin by yourself and protect Shizune and Naruto simultaneously. Tsunade could not help but reluctantly agree with what Jiraiya had said. Do you know what they want the bijus for? No, I don't, but whatever it is, I bet it not good. But despite this, there is some good news, since they have no idea about who the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi is. Sensei's keeping a tight lip on it all. They know for sure that the Kyuubi is sealed into a child, but they don't know which one, and not counting Sensei, were the only ones that know that Naruto is Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. As long as that is kept a secret, they shouldn't come after him. This of course gave Tsunade some relief, but the nagging fear in the pit of her stomach was still there. Also, from what I have gathered, they won't make any real move against any of the other Jinchuriki for a while, since they are still trying to recruit more members for their group and funds for financing the operations, whatever they are. It'd be a few years before they make any real move against anyone, and it means we still have time to prepare. Naruto, which got a look from Tsunade that said he better not be talking about what she thought he was thinking of. Now Tsunade, don't give me that look. I know you don't want to hear this, but you have to, since it's for Naruto's good as well as everyone else's. The Akatsuki members are no amateurs. They will eventually figure or find out that Naruto is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and when they do, they will come after him. So when Naruto is old enough, we will have to train Naruto to be a shinobi. At this point Tsunade was about to interrupt, telling him no, but before she could, Jiraiya cut her off and continued. Tsunade, like Sensei said, Naruto has the blood of some of the strongest shinobi to ever exist running through his veins, with you being among them as well. I doubt you could stop him from becoming one, and the stronger he becomes, the better his and our chances are against the Akatsuki when they do finally come. Also, Naruto will have to learn sooner or later that because of whom he is, who he related to, and what he is, he will always have to watch his back. There will always be those who will want to either use or destroy him because of what he may one day become, said Jiraiya with finality. After Jiraiya finished speaking, Tsunade remained quiet and just looked down at her son, who had finally stopped squirming and was falling asleep in her arms. As she did, she found herself silently cursing Minato for the 1000th time for turning her son into a Jinchuriki. After several minutes of just looking down at her sleeping son, Tsunade finally looked back up at Jiraiya. When she did, Jiraiya saw a look of determination in her eyes that he had not seen in many years. If that's the case, then so be it. When he is old enough, we will both train him. If any of these Akatsuki bastard try and take my son from me, they will have to go through me first, and they will find out firsthand why I am a Sannin, said Tsunade with a fire of determination in her eyes. Jiraiya saw this and just smiled and nodded. He could see that the love she had for Naruto and her maternal instincts to protect her child had reignited Tsunade's fighting spirit, one that he thought had long been extinguished. Shizune herself also made a silent vow as well to help with Naruto's training. Although she was not as strong or knowledgeable as either Jiraiya or Tsunade, she would help to protect her godson in whatever way she could. That night, Tsunade was sleeping peacefully in her room. All was serene until Naruto started crying in his crib. Tsunade woke up to this and got up off her futon. Going over to Naruto, Tsunade picked him up and held him, resting his head on her shoulders while gently rocking him in her arms. Naruto soon calmed down and quieted, much to Tsunade's delight. After another minute, Tsunade said thoughtfully, "I bet you're hungry, my little Naru-chan." Tsunade sat down on her futon with Naruto and prepared to breastfeed him. Just as she was about to open her night kimono, the door to her room opened, revealing Shizune cradling something in her arms. "I'm sorry, Tsunade-sensei," Shizune said. "I came in earlier to change Naruto's diaper when you were sleeping and I was just bringing him back now. I didn't want to wake you." Tsunade then saw that Shizune was cradling a fully awake Naruto in her arms. When the slug Sanin saw that, she knew that something was definitely wrong with this scene. "Wait a minute," Tsunade exclaimed. "If that's Naruto, then who am I?" Looking down at her arms, Tsunade saw that she was cradling a wooden log in her arms. While cradling the log, she turned and saw Naruto, quietly attempting to crawl and sneak away from her towards the opened window. As Naruto was making his way towards the window, he then felt an extreme bloodlust approaching and coming from behind him, as well as the sickening cracking of knuckles that became infamous whenever Tsunade was about to dish out a lot of pain. As he fearfully and slowly turned his head, he thought of one word that he thought might have saved him with puppy dog eyes and the suing of his right thumb, "Mama." Sadly, it did not work and Tsunade sent him soaring out the open window, where she quickly followed after him. The same small figure came crashing hard into the ground, forming a crater in it. The figure transformed back into his real self and was in much pain. He felt several of his bones break and was sore all over. "Wow," Jiraiya mourned. "So close, damn that Shizune. I was just a few seconds away from paradise, and I was really looking forward to having some of that good stuff she treats Naruto to." But before Jiraiya could finish what he was saying, he suddenly felt a dark shadow hovering over him, as well as a familiar bloodlust and killer intent on him again. He slowly and fearfully turned around and was again faced with Tsunade, who had a sadistically sweet smile on her face again. "You didn't think you get off that easy, did you?" Tsunade asked rhetorically as she hovered over him. As she came closer to him, Jiraiya could only whisper one word: "Mercy." But sadly for the Toad Hermit, there would be none. For about 10 minutes, terrifying screams of pain and abject misery could be heard by all who were still awake. Several miles away, a young couple who were quietly looking up at the full moon and a bright star in the night, when suddenly the women pointed up at a small object was soaring through the air. "Look, it's a shooting star, let's make a wish." "I don't think that a shooting star, sweetheart," said the man. "Then what is it?" asked the women. "I don't know," he replied, when suddenly a loud ear-splitting cry, "Yahoo-hoo-hoo-hooey!" Several miles further away, the shooting star then came crashing hard into the ground, forming yet another crater. The shooting star was in fact Jiraiya, who slowly crawled out of the crater before checking himself for whatever additional damages that was done to him by Tsunade's beating and as a result from the impact to the ground. In any case, he was in for a long crawl back to Tsunade house and a whole world of pain. Meanwhile, back where Jiraiya first landed, a very pissed off Tsunade was standing outside the first crater Jiraiya landed in and looking up at the night sky. "Damn perverted excuse for a life form," Tsunade stated. "I just might kill him if he pulls that stunt again." After which she then went back to the house to kiss her son goodnight before going to bed again. 1 month later. A month after Jiraiya came to give to his news on the Akatsuki and his failed attempt to be breastfed by Tsunade, things settled down again. The house even had one new occupant, said occupant being Jiraiya. He had decided to stay for a little while to spend some time with his godson and get to know him a little. In which case, he acted as part-time babysitter whenever Tsunade and Shizune were out helping to treat the villagers. Both women agreed to allow Jiraiya to babysit on the condition that he not try and corrupt Naruto into becoming a pervert like him under the threat of castration and disembowelment with dull kunai and bare hands. It was after a long day from healing a large number of people who had traveled from the outer parts of the village to get Tsunade to treat their various ailments that when she and Shizune came back to the house to find Jiraiya watching Naruto. The baby was playing with 3 small summoned toads that Jiraiya had summoned for Naruto to play with, which Naruto loved doing since he would waddle after the toads as they hop around the room with him trying to catch them. When Naruto saw his mother and Shizune, he squealed happy and waddled over to him mother to hug her, and as he went over to her he said, Mama, which surprised them since they did not expect Naruto to speak this way for few more months. Since he had shown no real signs of trying to speak other than babbling. Tsunade then picked up Naruto and asked, "What did you say, Naru-chan?" "Mama," repeated the blonde baby. This caused her to hug and cry in joy for her son at speaking his first real word. "What a smart boy you are, Naru-chan. You only started walking a few weeks ago and now you're starting to talk." "Naruto, can you say Hakubo, auntie?" "Can you?" asked Shizune as she gained Naruto attention. "Nei-chan, Nei-chan," Naruto said. "I doubt you'd get any better than that, Shizune," Tsunade chuckled. "Oh well, I guess being his Nei-chan isn't so bad," replied Shizune as she grabbed little Naruto's nose and wiggled it a little, which made him laugh. "Hey Naruto, do you know who I am?" "Do you?" asked an excited Jiraiya when he came up to Naruto to find out what he'd call him. "Pervert, pervert," replied Naruto as he pointed at Jiraiya, causing the sage to face fault and Shizune to giggle loudly while Tsunade smiled and laughed even harder. "That's my little boy, such a smart boy just like his Ka-chan," laughed Tsunade as she turned around to go into the kitchen with Naruto. "I resent that remark. I'm not a pervert," cried Jiraiya as he stood up. "Then what are you?" asked Tsunade, turning around slightly. "I'm a super pervert," grinned Jiraiya, after which an annoyed Tsunade elbowed him in the face and sent him flying to the other end of the room, resulting in him hitting the wall. "Damn pervert," muttered Tsunade as she went to the kitchen with Naruto and Shizune following closely behind. 1 month later. Currently Jiraiya was in Tsunade's house watching over Naruto again. Tsunade and Shizune had gone out to a small farm several miles out of the village to help the daughter of the farmer who was severely ill and in need of treatment. As he was watching Naruto, he was also trying to come up with new ideas for his latest book, but unfortunately he was having a severe case of writer's block. After a while he decided to take a walk around the village since he thought that the fresh air and exercise would do him good and re-energize his writer's imagination. As he walked around the streets of the town carrying Naruto, many young girls and women came over to him when they saw him carrying him. They started to surround them, commenting on how cute he was and adorable his whisker marks made him. Soon enough Jiraiya quickly realized that Naruto was a babe magnet and began cursing himself for not thinking of this sooner. After the women that had surrounded him and Naruto left, Jiraiya quickly ran to the village hot springs entrance where he knew that most women came out at this time to go home for the night and quickly put his plan into action. When Jiraiya saw a group of women coming out of the hot springs, he quickly acted as though he was about to enter himself. Jiraiya began to hum when the women ran toward him, commenting on how cute Naruto was. "Yes ladies, he is very cute, isn't he?" queried Jiraiya. "Is he yours?" asked a random woman. "Why no, he isn't, he's actually my godson." The women then began to swoon over Naruto, commenting how adorable he was with his whisker marks or how beautiful his eyes were, and asking more questions about him to Jiraiya, who was far too busy looking at their BRTS to answer any of their questions. As all this was happening, Naruto grew more and more confused as to why all these strange ladies were surrounding him. Unfortunately, the confused look that appeared on his face made him all the more adorable to the women, who began to pinch his cheeks and ruffle his spiky hair. Jiraiya smiled as he continued to ogle the swooning and silently thanked Kami for his godson's cuteness. Things seemed as though they were only going to get better when Naruto tried to grab onto the woman's finger with his small little hand, which earned him even more attention from the women. "Oh, he's trying to grab my finger. He's so adorable, isn't he?" said a brunette woman. Naruto, who was still a little confused at where he was, but when he looked up to see his godfather smiling back at him, he immediately giggled and decided to enjoy all the attention and began to bounce up and down in his godfather's arms, which only made the women attract to him even more. Jiraiya couldn't believe that Naruto could get him this much action and made a mental note to hint to Tsunade that he could watch him whenever she needed him to. Jiraiya began to think about how he could milk this even further when he suddenly remembered the time when Naruto wouldn't stop crying when he first babysat for Tsunade, and he summoned a toad which he almost squeezed into oblivion. Jiraiya smirked and patted himself on the back for his brilliant thinking and then quickly summoned a small toad and ordered the toad to hop into Naruto's view. While Naruto was hopping up and down in Jiraiya's grasp, the toad jumped onto Jiraiya's shoulder. Naruto immediately stopped bouncing when he saw the toad and began to reach for it. The women awed at Naruto's actions and became even more infatuated with the young boy when he was able to get a hold the toad and begin hugging it for dear life. Unfortunately, as Jiraiya was busy trying to make his move on the young village women, Tsunade and Shizune were entering the village after finishing with helping to treat the daughter of the farmer. They then decided to head for the hot spring to relax a little before returning home since they believed that they deserved a little downtime after helping the young girl. When they were nearing the hot spring entrance, they saw a large group of women surrounding a tall white-haired man with a small blonde-haired boy in his arms who was squeezing a poor toad to near death. Tsunade quickly realized that the blonde boy was her son and the tall white-haired man was Jiraiya. She then quickly realized that Jiraiya must have been using her son to attract women. When she realized this, one thing was on her mind. Kill Jiraiya, slow, and painfully. As Jiraiya was about to make a move on the women, he suddenly felt a sense of dread wash over him and realized that his teammate must be somewhere nearby. Jiraiya's fears were confirmed when he turned around and saw Tsunade stomping right towards him with a very angry Shizune right behind her. She too knew what Jiraiya was doing with her nephew, little brother, godson, and for once she would not try and calm Tsunade down, she would actually help her kill Jiraiya. "Hi Saya, what's up?" asked a very nervous Jiraiya. "Oh, not much. I was just coming back from helping that young farm girl who got ill and decided to come her to relax a little, and then I saw you and Naru-chan here. I was just wondering why you were here when I thought you'd be at home," said Tsunade all too sweetly for Jiraiya taste. "Oh, well, you see, I just wanted to spend some time with him, and, as you can see, he is very happy," spoke Jiraiya nervously as he tried to come up with a good excuse to avoid being beaten to a pulp by Tsunade and probably Shizune as well. When Tsunade looked at Naruto, he was indeed happily squeezing a poor toad to death. "Well, Jiraiya, tell your friends goodbye because we need to get Naruto back home before it gets too late since it's nearly his bedtime," said Tsunade with a look in her eyes that promised pain when they got back. Jiraiya informed the women that he and Naruto had to go, and all the women sighed though knowing that the boy's mother wanted him home. So they reluctantly said goodbye to the pair. "So Saya, let's get going," said Jiraiya. "Oh, I agree wholeheartedly," said Tsunade, who took Naruto away from Jiraiya, who began to walk away. "And just where are you going, Jiraiya?" said Shizune, who was twirling her Senbon needles, which made Jiraiya very nervous. "Back to the house like you said." "Oh, we have a much quicker way for us to get there," said Tsunade. Tsunade and Shizune each then placed their hand on Jiraiya's shoulders and the four of them were shunshined back home. "Well, Tsunade, I should get going. You can put Naruto to bed and I'll go myself since I better get back on the road again," Jiraiya quickly said and tried to get away, but Tsunade grabbed him by the collar and forced him to the ground. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya and then told Shizune to put Naruto to bed while she had a talk with the terrified toad sage. Shizune left the room with Naruto, who was cuddling the toad while Jiraiya pleaded with Tsunade. "Shizune, before you put Naruto to bed, see if he might be hungry," said Tsunade as she began to crack her knuckles. "I will, sensei, but please save a piece of him for me, please," Shizune replied as she went to the next room. "I'll try, but no promises." I'm sorry, I just wanted to take Naruto to meet some new people, that's all, I swear," pleaded Jiraiya on bended knees. "I see. Jiraiya, I would like you to meet someone that you are very familiar with." "Who?" "The end of my fist." After which for the next hour screams of pain from a certain super pervert could be heard for several miles around. N.A. 1. The name Tsunade goes by while she stays in the village since she does not want to attract attention by using her real name. Currently sitting down on the porch of her new temporary home was Suon, drinking a small plate of sake. As he looked out to the trees near to her, she saw her son, 5-year-old son Naruto, whom she had been watching for the past 4 hours running up and down the tree he had been climbing by channeling his chakra from his feet. Suan could not help but smirk at all the energy that her son had. Most kids his age wouldn't have enough chakra to go up even a quarter ways up the tree, let alone be able to channel their small chakra reserves to their feet and even try to walk up the tree. They had began Naruto training when he was 4 and slowly increased the training little by little. At first they only had him running, but soon after they started him to teach him to read and how to channel chakra, do different exercises and wear weights. It had been a trouble getting him to settle down enough so to teach him to read, since like when he was a baby Naruto was still a very active child who did not like to stay still long. But eventually they were able to get his interest into reading by having plenty of pictures with animals on it since he enjoyed animals. Over time Naruto gained an interest in reading, especially if the books had pictures in it. Also, when they started to train Naruto in his chakra training, they learned that the best way to teach him was to visually show and explain it to him, so to keep his attention since he could be easily bored. But even still, when Naruto started to train to control and use his chakra, they learned 2 things. The first was that he had very high chakra reserves for a boy his age. Currently Naruto's chakra level was that of a young genin, and although that does not seems very high, the fact that a 4-year-old boy had that level was astounding. When Tsunade asked Jiraiya about this, he said it was not unexpected for Jinchurikis to have high chakra levels. Due to them having a demon spirit inside them where their bodies would adapted to handle the strain by having their chakra coils thicken and reserves become larger, so they can handle the Excel chakra that would come from their bijus after being diluted by their seals. The second thing they learned was that Naruto had inherited her natural flawless chakra control. They learned this when Naruto was given his first chakra control exercise and to keep a leaf stuck on his head, in which he got it on the first go after it was explained to him. It was proven even further when he was able to channel his chakra to his feet and walk up on a tree with just his feet. This was surprise since in most cases whenever someone had large chakra reserves their control was not very good. While when someone had excellent chakra control they had small reserves, but Naruto had both without either of the negative effects. When Tsunade and Jiraiya learned this, it pushed away any remaining doubt about Naruto being a highly skilled ninja one day. The reason why Naruto was doing the exercise now was to help increase his stamina, not that it needed much improving since Naruto proved to be a stamina monster, and in the increase of his chakra reserves while at the same time keeping his control high as well. Okay Naru-chan, that enough for today. Why don't you take a break for today since you don't want to overexert yourself by training too much, said Tsunade as she saw her son was getting tired. But Ka-chan, pant. I can, pant, still, pant, keep going, pant, said the clearly tired boy. Tsunade just smiled at her little boy trying to act tough. I know that Naru-chan, but why don't you and me go into town and have an ice pop since it's such a warm day and as a reward for working so hard? At this little Naruto smiled and jumped up and yelled happily at having a treat, after which he and his mother went downtown. Not long after, Naruto and Tsunade were walking through town, each licking an ice pop. Tsunade had her special genjutsu on where everyone in town saw her as a medium-sized raven-haired woman with blue eyes, while Naruto just saw her as she usually was. As they walked by, Tsunade saw an open casino and decided to have a look around, where she and Naruto went in. Although Tsunade had swore not to gamble away their money like she used to before she had Naruto, she did do a small bit of gambling by doing the slots and only spending a small amount. As they walked around the slot area, Tsunade saw a quarter on the ground and picked it up. She then decided that one go at the slots wouldn't hurt. Just when she was about to put in the coin, Naruto suddenly spoke up. Ka-chan, what are you doing? I'm just playing a game that grown-ups play for fun, replied Tsunade, since it was kind of true. Can I play? Asked Naruto, who was still licking his ice pop. At first Tsunade would have said no since Shizune would most likely lecture her about giving Naruto her bad gambling habits, but she decided that one go at the slots would not make her Naru-chan an addict. Okay Naru-chan, you can have one go, okay, said Tsunade, to which the young boy just nodded. She then showed him where to put the coin and then held him up so he could pull the lever. The reels in the machine started to spin for a few seconds before they started to slow down, where the first one stayed on the gold coin image, the second stayed on another gold coin and was followed by a third gold coin. After which the slot machine started to light up, the bells in the machine started ringing as well, where coins then started to fall out the machine. Naru-chan, you won, cried a shocked Tsunade. I did, yay, said the boy happily. Can I do it again? He asked. WWE, why not, it couldn't hurt, said Tsunade, thinking Naruto might as well as used his lucky streak while he had it. For the next hour Naruto kept playing the slots and every time he won. It was unbelievable. Tsunade had never heard at anyone being so lucky at gambling before in her life. Figures, while I get all the bad luck when it comes to gambling, but my kid has all the luck in the world and is natural gambler. This must be Kami bitch slapping me again like this, though Tsunade annoyed. It was as she was thinking this that Tsunade quickly decided to try something else to see how lucky her son really was. Hey Naru-chan, how about we go try another game? Said Tsunade. Okay. After which Tsunade quickly brought all the buckets that she had gotten to carry the coins Naruto won and ground them to be exchanged for chips. After then she then brought Naruto and the chips to the crap table, where she simplified the rules, where all he had to do was throw the dice and try and keep getting good numbers like 7 with the dice. After Tsunade had placed Naruto bets for him, he began to throw the dice like he was told, and like with the slots Naruto kept getting the numbers he needed and was cleaning house at the crap table. My little Naru-chan, a gambling genius, cried Tsunade happily as she hugged his son tightly when she was seeing how much money her son was winning. Naruto just struggled to breathe as his mother smothered him in between her two large mounds, much to the envy of the men who were watching Naruto play. After the dealer at the crap table had told them that they could no longer play there, Tsunade decided to take their winnings, a stagger 20 million ryo in chips, and went to the roulette table and put Naruto gambling luck to the true test. Okay Naru-chan, this is simple. All you have to do is tell Ka-chan what number to pick and money we put the money on it, okay? Remember what Ka-chan said earlier, it all or nothing, said Tsunade, to which Naruto in understanding. Tsunade the place the boxes full of chips on the table, and just when she was about to ask Naruto what number, a familiar voice shouted out which make her cringe. Sensei. Several minutes earlier, Shizune was travel through the streets with her shopping with Tonton and was on her way home when she suddenly saw a large group of people in the local casino. As she walked by, she heard some people mutter about some women and her kid were cleaning up in the casino. Deciding to have a look, she went in, and when she did, she saw the women was none other Tsunade with Naruto betting at the roulette, at which point she cried out angrily to her sensei. He, Shizune, how it's going, spoke Tsunade like a kid who had its hand caught in the cookie jar. I was fine until I came in here to see what all the fuss was about and found my sensei using her son for gambling, spoke Shizune angrily. Oink! Cried Tonton angrily at her mistress. Hey now Shizune, calm down, it not like that, you see. After Naruto's training I decided to treat him to an ice pop, and when we saw the casino I came to have a look and I found a quarter on the floor. After that I was just going to have one go when Naru-chan said he wanted to, and I let him, thinking it wouldn't do any harm. When he did play he kept whining and whining at the slots and then at the crap table. He a gambling genius and has more luck than a 4-leaf clover, said Tsunade trying to explain herself. I don't what your reasons are, you had no, said Shizune angrily before she was interrupted by Tsunade. But he won over 20 million ryo already. I don't care if he won, said Shizune before she stopped and spoke again, TT 20 million ryo, to which Tsunade just nodded. Shizune was close to fainted when she heard this, but before she could the man of the roulette table spoke. All bets are closed, one straight up bet. At which the two women turned to see that Naruto had made a bet by himself. Naru-chan, what did you do? Cried Tsunade. I did what you said, Ka-chan. I went all or nothing and beat all the money on number 2 red, replied Naruto happily, which caused his mother to cry in frustration and making her cruise herself for her poorly chosen words. As the roulette began to slow down, the two women were biting their nails out of pure nervousness while Naruto just looked on happily, not truly understand what he had just done. As the ball began to slow down further and was hopping along the other slots. "I can't watch," cried Shizune as she closed her eyes as her nerves couldn't take the suspense, and was quickly joined by Tsunade as she too closed her eyes, along with Tonton, who was lying down and using her hooves to cover her eyes. As Tsunade did, she just saw the ball hopping into OO black, and thinking that they lost, Tsunade was ready to hear the man say the house won. But instead of that, the man said, "Two red player wins and has broken the bank." At this, Tsunade popped open her eyes and saw that the ball had indeed landed on two red, and it must have hopped out OO black right when she closed her eyes and hopped into two red. Tsunade quickly raced over to her son and started to smother him in between her giant mounds again, much to the envy of the male population again, and cry at how happy she was and proud of her little gambling genius son. Shizune, on the other hand, just fainted, since when she heard that Naruto won, she quickly calculated that on the odds of 36 to 1. Multiplying that to the 20 million that Naruto had won and bet in a single straight-up bet, which added up to Naruto winning over 720 million ryo. After they had got all the winning, they cashed out and sealed all the money into a scroll and quickly left. If they had stayed, they would have seen the casino owner crying, since his casino was ruined now. When they got home, Shizune berated Tsunade for taking Naruto and having him gamble for her, and told her that she was forbidden to take Naruto to a casino ever again, much to Tsunade's annoyance. She also had the money that Naruto won sent to Sarutobi so he could put it in Namikaze account, since the money was his since he won it all. Although Tsunade did cry at the loss of all the money and all the things she could buy with it. Konoha the next day. Currently sitting at his desk, the Sandaime Hokage was reading Jiraiya's newest book, Ika Ika Violence, since today was one of the few days that he had no paperwork. As he was reading, there was a sudden poof, and when he looked away from his book, he saw one of Suon's slug summons on his table with a scroll on its back. "Greeting Hokage-sama, I have a message from Shizune-san," spoke the small slug. "What you that message be then? She would like you to put the money in this scroll into the Namikaze family account." "If I may ask, how much is in this scroll?" asked the old cage as he took the scroll. 720 million ryo, replied the slug summon plainly. "Okay, that's 720 miles, said Sarutobi as he was about to stand up, when he suddenly realized what he heard and fell down on the ground with pure shock. He quickly stood up and looked directly at the slug summon and shouted, "How the hell did they get 720 million ryo? Young Master Naruto won it all when Suon-sama took him to a local casino," replied the slug summon. "She took a 5-year-old boy to a casino and he won over 720 million ryo by himself," replied Sarutobi in disbelief, to which the summon only nodded. "What the hell is she teaching that boy?" sighed the old man, who was now trying to think how he was going to explain this massive input of money to the bank manager, let alone Seiwa Genji, the man who manages the Namikaze accounts businesses. After which the summon just left and the old Hokage got out of his seat to go to the bank, and as he did, he could not help but chuckle a little. It seems that young Naruto has not inherited you bad luck at gambling, Tsunade. In fact, he has the direct opposite in terms of gambling and you. I look forward to what other surprises young Naruto will have for us when he comes to Konoha, though Sarutobi. 1 month later. Currently Tsunade was sitting in the living room reading a medical book in her new house, since they had to move out of the last town they were in, due to the fact that a 5-year-old kid winning 720 million ryo kind of draws attention to you. As Suon read the book, she could not but sigh, since today was her birthday and the only one who remembered it was Shizune, who got her this book. Although she was grateful for the book and that Shizune remembered her birthday, she was still a bit down since Shizune was the only one who remembered. Hence it would have been nice for someone else to remember and get her something like a nice bottle of sake, chocolates or flowers even. Just as Suon was about to continue to read her book, she suddenly heard a shout. Ka-chan, where are you?" cried Naruto. I'm in here Naru-chan, what wrong? Answered Tsunade. When Tsunade answered, Naruto quickly ran across the corner to enter the living. When Suan saw Naruto, she also saw him carrying a small Prunus cerulata bonsai tree in a small flower pot. Here Ka-chan, happy birthday, said Naruto holding the small bonsai tree to his mother. At first when Tsunade saw the small tree she did not know what to say, but she soon got over her surprise and took the bonsai tree from her son and looked at it. The small tree had smooth bark with pink and with cherry blossom flowers surrounding its small branches. All in all, it was a very beautifully tree. Tsunade then began to get teary-eyed and quickly put down the bonsai tree and then grabbed Naruto into a smothering hug, to which the poor boy could barely breath. Thank you Naru-chan, this is the best gift I've ever gotten, said Tsunade as she hugged her son tightly, who despite being nearly crushed to death by his mother smiled and making his mother happy. After a few minutes Tsunade let go of Naruto and put her bonsai tree on the windowsill, after which she then turned to her son. Naru-chan, who told you it was my birthday was today? Asked Tsunade, since she knew Naruto could not have known it and someone must have told him and she had a guess who. Tsunade-chan told me last week, answered Naruto, confirming what Tsunade guessed. And did she give you to the tree to me as a present? Asked Tsunade, since she suspected that this was Shizune's way of cheering her up a bit, but to her surprise Naruto shook his head. No, I got it myself, answered Naruto. Then did she give you the money or it? She asked, since with the small little bit of pocket money she gave Naruto a week, she knew he did not have enough money to buy it himself, but to her surprise Naruto shook his head again. No, I grew it, replied Naruto. This of course confused Tsunade but then frowned. Naru-chan, now don't lie to me. But I'm not, I did grow it myself, said the boy. Naru-chan, I know full well that you can't grow a tree like that in just 1 week, replied Tsunade, frowning more since she did not like her son lying to her. But I did Ka-chan, I really did, I tried doing it all week by myself when I bought seeds for it from the flower lady with the pocket money I had, and I finally got it a little while ago, said the boy earnestly, since he did not like being called a liar or having his mother angry at him. Then show me Naru-chan, said Tsunade as she folded her arms since she did not really believe him. Naruto then nodded and led his mother outside, where he then took out a seed packet for the bonsai tree from his pocket shorts. After which he then dug a small hole in the ground and put the seed into it, after which he then covered it with the soil he had dug out when making the hole. After which he then put both his hands over the spot he put the seed in and then started to channel his chakra into the ground where the seed was. What happened next made Tsunade go wide-eyed and start gapping like a fish out of water. Since as Naruto was channeling his chakra, a small sapling appeared between Naruto's hands and started to grow bigger and bigger until Naruto stopped. Where once he hadn't stepped away, Tsunade saw a small but fully grown and equally lovely Prunus cerulata bonsai tree standing next to him. NN Naru-chan, HH, how on earth, did you do that, said the stunned Suand. Shizune-chan told me about how great-grandfather Hashirama could grow big giant trees with just his chakra. I tried that but I couldn't get it, so I bought some seeds and used my chakra to make it grow bigger. It took me a few days but I was able to do it today, and once I did I came to give you your gift, said Naruto as if it was noting and did not truly realize what he had done. When Naruto finished explaining, Tsunade just continued to gap. Mokuden. Naruto has the power to use Mokuden, but how? That ability was lost when Hashirama Ojiazan died and no one in our clan has ever been able to use ability since. So how is Naruto able to do it? Does it have something to do with the Kyuubi? I need to get Jiraiya here and now, though Suand, after which she quickly put on a happy face. I see Naru-chan, that a very nice trick you learned by yourself. Why don't we go inside now and have a nice bowl of ramen, okay? Yeah, ramen, cried Naruto, happy since he loved ramen. Naruto wouldn't be Naruto without his love for ramen. Oh, and Naru-chan, let's keep you little trick our little secret for now, okay? Said Tsunade. Okay, said Naruto, not really understanding, after which he and his mother went inside. A few days later. After a few days since the incident with Naruto using Mokuden, Tsunade was able to make contact with Jiraiya through her summons and told him that she needed to speak to him imminently. Soon after, Jiraiya arrived in the town that they were staying in and came through the window right when Tsunade, Naruto and Shizune along with Tonton were finishing lunch. When Jiraiya entered the room, he was quickly covered in smoke, after which once it lifted they could say he was standing on a medium-sized toad. Listen up, you chicks. Open up your beady little eyes and take a good look. Behold the divine ninja Jiraiya, spoke Jiraiya as he was doing his introduction dance, but before he could finish Naruto spoke up. Hiya Arrow Sennin. This caused Jiraiya to lose his balance and fall flat on his face in front of them. This in turn caused everyone to burst out laughing at Jiraiya's expense. I told you, brat. Stop calling me that, whined Jiraiya at his wounded pride since his cool introduction dance was ruined by Naruto outburst. But why? Both Ka-chan and Nei-chan say that you're a pervert, and you said it yourself, you are a pervert and you are a senin, so that means you're Arrow Senin, said Naruto. He got you there, pervert, chuckled Tsunade while Shizune giggled and Tonton oinked in agreement. I'm not a pervert, I'm a super pervert, cried Jiraiya, and he did a ridiculous looking pose which caused everyone else to have a large sweat drop behind their heads. Jiraiya then decided to change the subject from him into why Tsunade had wanted to speak to him so badly. So what is so urgent that you needed to see me so quickly? Asked Jiraiya. Naru-chan, can you show Arrow Senin your little trick? Asked Tsunade, who was smirking at Jiraiya's indignant yell. Okay, replied Naruto as he, Tonton, Shizune, Tsunade and Jiraiya went outside, where Naruto then dug another hole in the ground next to the Prunus cerulata bonsai tree that he grew earlier for Tsunade. After which he then repeated the same process as he did before when she showed it to his mother. When Shizune saw this, she could not help but be surprised, since although Tsunade had already told her of Naruto abilities, it was still surprising to see Naruto being able to use the same legendary ability as the Shadaime Hokage. But as surprised as Shizune was, Jiraiya was utterly flabbergasted, since even though Naruto was the Shadaime great-grandson, he never expected for Naruto to have the Shadaime Mokuden abilities. Since it was long believed that despite it having all the characteristics of a bloodline, it was never classified as one, since neither Tsunade, her brother, nor their father or of the Shadaime other relatives had inherited it, hence it was just believed to be a mutation. This changes everything, thought Jiraiya. Naru-chan, you go play with Tonton for a little while I talk to Jiraiya, okay? Said Tsunade as she smiled down at her son. Okay, Ka-san. Come on Tonton, let's play tag and you're it, said Naruto as he ran off. Tonton just went oink and went off to play with Naruto. When Naruto and Tonton had left, Tsunade then turned to Jiraiya with a serious look on her face. You can see why I wanted to talk to you immediately, said Tsunade and turned to face Jiraiya, who had an equally serious face and just nodded on what Tsunade had said since he was in deep thought. Jiraiya, is this an effect of the Kyuubi being inside Naruto? Asked Tsunade. No, I don't believe so, since although there has never been a Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi before, I'm still certain that isn't a side effect of Naruto having the Kyuubi inside of him, since it doesn't match the abilities that the Kyuubi is known to have. Although Jinchurikis are each given special abilities by their bijus, for example the Ikibi no Shukaku Jinchurikis always have the ability to control and manipulate sand. But in Naruto's case no, since the Kyuubi abilities have no connection to nature or Mokuden but your clan dos, hence I believe Naruto has just reawakened the Mokuden ability. But how is that possible? Mokuden is a mutation that only appeared in my grandfather, it isn't a bloodline, replied Tsunade. Well, it seems that we were wrong, since it's the only answer as to why Naruto has it, spoke Jiraiya. Then why is it that my grandfather was the only person to be able to have it? Why didn't my father, Nawaki, myself inherit it from him, or any of the other members of my clan have the ability to use Mokuden as well? Asked Tsunade. The only reason I can think of is something that I read a while back when I was training in Myobokuzen. during which I came across an ancient record written by a sage long back when the great shinobi clans were only being founded. In the scroll it spoke how when the bloodlines were first showing up, it said that the bloodlines were unstable and many of the children of bloodline holders did not receive their parents' bloodline. It was not until a few generations more after the first bloodline holders of each bloodline did the bloodlines finally stabilize so that the other generations of the clans would have them. This can explain how not everyone in a clan with a bloodline can receive and use their clan's bloodline, since it may have not stabilized in certain people. The Uchiha clan is a prime example of this since only a quarter of its members can use the Sharingan, since it was only the ancestors of that part of the clan whose bloodline finally stabilized enough for it to be passed down to them, spoke Jiraiya and continued. My guess is that your grandfather was the first person to be born with the Mokudan ability, and like with the first bloodline users, the Mokudan bloodline was too unstable to be passed on to his descendants like your father, your brother and you Tsunade. But it seems that the Mokudan ability has finally stabilized with Naruto, hence why he's the one to have it, finished Jiraiya. Tsunade just nodded since it made sense, and as a medic she knew a lot about genetics, and how some genetic traits are not always inherited by everyone in a family or clan, especially if certain genes were unstable. I'm also afraid that now with Mokudan, Naruto is in even greater danger than he was before, spoke Jiraiya again, which Tsunade frowned and nodded in agreement, while Shizune just looked confused and decided to ask why. But Jiraiya-sama, why is Naruto now in more danger with Mokudan? The reason is because when word reaches the other villages and certain organizations like the Akatsuki, they will come after Naruto, since he would be very useful to the Akatsuki, with his Mokudan powers. Especially if he is properly trained in it, he could help the Akatsuki greatly by subduing the other Jinchurikis, by using his Mokudan powers to suppress their Biju's powers, making them easier for the Akatsuki to capture them. Not to mention other villages would want him to use him as a weapon to use against other Jinchurikis, since the power of the Shadaime Mokudan is well known by all, where it could match even the Sharingan in terms of powers and certain special abilities. They would want it even more if I'm right about the Mokudan finally stabilizing and becoming an official bloodline where Naruto could pass it on to his future children. In which case they would use him as a breeder to make entire clan of Mokudan users, where they would have an entire clan with the power to suppress Bijus and controls them. Something that many villages would stop at noting to have, and if they could not have it they would have Naruto killed to keep others from having that kind of power. It would be even worse if they found out that Naruto was also the Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi, the strongest of all the Bijus. Because if you combine the power of a Jinchuriki that contains the strongest of Bijus inside him, with the power of Mokudan which can suppress Biju's powers and control them, you get a force that could be virtually unstoppable. In which every village in the elemental continent would be after Naruto and wouldn't stop until either they kidnap him and gain control of him or kill him and keep him from becoming a major threat to them. The Akatsuki would even pounce on him with everything they had, since Naruto could very well ruin whatever plans they have with the Bijus, spoke Jiraiya. Shizune paled at the thought of her godson, little brother, nephew being in now greater danger than before. Suan just frowned deeper and nodded in agreement, since she had come to the same conclusion as Jiraiya had when it came to Naruto's new ability when she waited for Jiraiya to arrive. So what do we do now? Asked Shizune. We have to increase and speed up Naruto's training more than ever now, since in a couple of years Naruto will need to be as strong as he can be to fight off enemies that will be coming after him sooner or later, said Jiraiya. Should we inform the Sandaime Hokage about Naruto having Mokudan? Said Shizune. No, we keep him in the dark about it, since the fewer people know about this the better, since there might be a chance that someone like Danzo could intercept the message or somehow learn about it if we tell Sensei. Beside, when Naruto does eventually reveal that he has Mokudan to the village, Sensei will have the excuse of not knowing and he wouldn't have to deal with Danzo or his supporters on the council, trying to usurp his position over how he didn't inform them about Naruto abilities, said Jiraiya. Do we really have to reveal Naru-chan abilities to village Jiraiya? Can't we just keep it secret? Asked Suand. We have no choice, Haim. Naruto will need to learn properly control and master Himokuden abilities if he going to stand a chance in the future. We can help him as best as we can, but still he won't be able to fully master or control his Mokuden abilities unless he gets proper training in it, answered Jiraiya. But how can he get training there? Naru-chan is the only Mokuden user in the entire world, said Tsunade. I'm afraid that's where you're wrong, Haim. There is one other, answered Jiraiya with a slight sigh. What? Jiraiya, you're not making any sense. Other than Naru-chan, my grandfather was the only other user to be able to use Mokuden and he dead, replied Tsunade. There is one other, said Jiraiya. Who? Said the annoyed Tsunade, who was getting annoyed with being kept in the dark. You see, back before Sensei discovered Orochimaru's experiments on the people and shinobis in Konoha to develop techniques that would grant him immortality. Orochimaru stole 60 infants and injected them with the Shadaime Hokage DNA in the hopes of recreating the Shadaime Hokage and his Mokuden. But before he could finish his work, he was forced to leave Konoha, since Sensei found out that he was behind the missing shinobis, civilians and infants. Out of the 60 infants that Orochimaru stole and injected the Shadaime Hokage DNA into, only one survived and received the ability to use the Shadaime Hokage Mokuden powers, replied Jiraiya sadly, since that event had shown how far his former friend and teammate had fallen just to gain power. But Tsunade and Shizune were shocked and horrified at the information, especially Tsunade, since she didn't think that even Orochimaru would do such a thing. But she had been wrong. Tsunade could not help but feel sick at what Orochimaru had done and swore if she ever saw the bastard she would skin him alive with her bare hands. Since as a mother and a medic, the very idea of experimenting on children in such a way turned her stomach. Jiraiya, why the hell wasn't I told about this? Said Tsunade angrily, since the idea of Orochimaru desecrating her grandfather's grave and using his DNA to experiment and murder innocent children made her furious. I'm sorry, Tsunade, but you had left the village long ago and the whole event was classified top secret. I only know because Sensei told, since he knew I was trying to track down Orochimaru, and he believed that I needed to know exactly what Orochimaru had done in the village. And who exactly is the child that survived Orochimaru experiments and gained my grandfather's Mokuden abilities? Asked Tsunade. The kid's name is Tenzo. He's 20 now and proven himself to be quite a ninja since he graduated out of the academy at age 6 and made Chunin a few months later. He's even one of Konoha's top Anbu and is one of Sensei's most trusted operatives, replied Jiraiya. And how skilled is he in using Mokuden? Asked Tsunade, although she was impressed with Tenzo's skill if what Jiraiya said was true. According to Sensei, he completely mastered the Mokuden jutsus that he learned from your grandfather's scrolls in the Senju clan library, although cannot use the Mokuden techniques to its full potential. Hence his full power pales in comparison to that of your grandfather. But despite that, he can help Naruto greatly in training in how to use it, and possibly Naruto will be able to surpass him and use Mokuden to the same level as your grandfather could. Which it would be very likely, since he is a pure-blooded Senju and the directed descendant of the Shadaime Hokage, hence why he would be so valuable to certain people. Finished Jiraiya. After Jiraiya's explanation, Tsunade just sighed, although she did not like the fact that her sensei went and took scrolls belonging to her grandfather from her clan's secret library. She understood why he did it and knew he would not abuse that privilege and return the scrolls back to the library. She then looked over at her son as he played with Tauntaun without a care in the world. She wanted nothing more than for Naruto to have a long, peaceful and quiet life where he could grow up happy, as well as have a family one day when he was older and live with them happily without having to worry about enemies attacking them or going through the hardship that he would as a shinobi. But Tsunade knew that would never happen, and now with his Mokuden powers his life now just got a whole lot harder now. But regardless, she would help her son no matter what the cost to her and make sure that he becomes strong enough to defend himself and those he care about, and she would make sure that he would live a long and as happy a life as possible. I hope I can count on your help when training Jiraiya, because he going to need all the help he can get, said Tsunade. Of course I do whatever I can, since I swore to Minato that I would train the boy when the time came, answered Jiraiya. I will help too Suan-sensei, and even though I might not be as much help to him as you both, but I will help Naruto in any way I can, spoke Shizune. Thank you Shizune, I knew I could count on you, said Tsunade. So when should we start? Asked Jiraiya. We start tomorrow. We'll let him have today off, since he's not going to have much time to be a kid for a while and he might as well enjoy it when he can, said Tsunade, to which both Jiraiya and Shizune nodded and watched Naruto play with Taunton along with Tsunade. 2 months later. Ever since Naruto revealed to Tsunade and Jiraiya that he had inherited his great-grandfather Mokudan ability, Naruto was trained even harder than he was before. Tsunade helped him with his chakra control exercises, not that he needed much help since he had inherited her natural flawless chakra control, where he was now walking on water and was balancing small tin objects like a dull kunai on the tips of his fingers. She also helped Naruto with his physical training, where she increased his weight little by little and had him do lots of running and different exercises. Tsunade also planned to help Naruto with his fighting skills, where when he was a bit older she would put him through her special dodge training, much to Jiraiya and Shizune worry. Shizune helped Naruto how to aim and throw senbons, shurikens and kunais, as well as help him improve on his reading and writing. She was also planning on helping Naruto to study medical books when he go a little older so to understand them better, since Suan wanted to train Naruto to be a medic. So that if he was ever hurt he could heal himself, since he had the control needed to make a medic, and with the proper training and if they start early enough where they get Naruto settled in to become a medic nin, he would make a fine medic. Jiraiya was now just planning on helping Naruto to train by helping him to learn jutsus, where he planned to teach him just the basics like Henja's transformation technique, Shunshin no Jutsu body flicker technique, Kawarimi no Jutsu body replacement technique, and Bunshin no Jutsu clone technique. After Naruto had finished mastering them and be able to use them in the right types of combinations, he then planned to teach Naruto a few more slightly more powerful jutsus when he got older. He did it this way since Jiraiya knew it did not matter how many different highly powerful jutsu a person have, if they did not know how to use them correctly then they were useless. Also he knew that if a person completely masters the basics and knows how to use them correctly then they would nearly unstoppable. Jiraiya also planned that when Naruto got a little older he would teach him Fuinjutsu, and with any luck the kid would be like his old man and be a genius at it. It was at this time now that Jiraiya had arrived on Naruto's 6th birthday to see Naruto and start to train him in jutsus. But when he arrived he found out that Naruto wasn't training today, instead he had the day off, and was celebrating his birthday with Shizune, Taunton and his mother. When Jiraiya arrived at the house he found Tsunade and Shizune together at the house cleaning up after their little celebration of Naruto's birthday. When he asked where Naruto was they told him that he was out in the backyard playing with Taunton again, with his new toy kuni and ninja mask that he got from Shizune and his new ninja teddy that he got from Tsunade. When Jiraiya went out he saw Naruto was playing ninja with Taunton, where he was chasing Taunton around with his ninja mask on and carrying him toy kunai and ninja teddy with him. Hey brat, happy birthday, cried Jiraiya, getting Naruto attention. When Naruto heard him he turned to see Jiraiya weaving and smiling at him. He took off his mask and ran over to Jiraiya. As Naruto was wearing a small white short-sleeved shirt with a spiral design on its front and wore blue shorts. Naruto had also changed a bit from in the last 2 months. He had grown a little bigger, and his whisker birthmarks that he had gotten when the Kyuubi was sealed into him were gone. Jiraiya theorized that when Naruto's awakened his Mokudan bloodline, his bloodline negated the physical effects that the Kyuubi had on his body, since the Mokudan power did suppress Biju chakra. Oh hey Arrow Sennin. This of course caused Jiraiya to face fall down onto the ground, but he quickly got up and started to yell at Naruto. Damn it brat, I told you not to call me that, cried the Toad Hermit. But why it true and it's fun, giggled Naruto while Jiraiya just mumbled about youngest today showing no respect to their elders. So Arrow Sennin, causing Jiraiya to twitch his eyebrows in annoyance. Did you come to play ninja with me? Asked the young blonde. Sorry to say brat, but no I didn't. I came to tell you that I going to staying with you, Shizune and your mom for a little while again since I going to help you in your training, said Jiraiya. Oh, and what are you going to be training me in Arrow Sennin? Asked the boy since Naruto did not mind doing training since he found it fun. I going to be training you in jutsu, said Jiraiya, which caused the young boy to start shouting in excitement since he had wanted to learn cool new jutsus but his mother wouldn't teach him any. So what are you going to teach me? Ha, ha, ha. Is it going to be some super cool water jutsu like great Uncle Tobirama, or a jutsu that will let grow big gigantic trees like great grandfather Hashirama, or some super cool fire jutsus like Ka-chan told me Hiruzen Ojiazin can do? Asked Noro excitedly while he was jumping up and down. Sorry brat, but you're nowhere near ready for those kind of jutsus. I going to teach you how to do henges, shunshin no jutsu, kawarimi no jutsu and bunshin no jutsu. When you fully mastered those and can use them in the right types of combinations, I will teach you some more, said Jiraiya. Whined Naruto since he had wanted to learn loads of cool jutsus. Now I was going to teach you how to do shunshin no jutsu, but since it's your birthday we're going to leave that till tomorrow since your mom told me that you have the day off today, said Jiraiya. OOOKKKKKKAAAAAAAYYYYYY, said Naruto since he was still down about not learning any super cool jutsus. Hey brat, don't be so down, I got a present for you, said Jiraiya, which caused the boy to smile immediately since every kid likes getting presents. Here, said Jiraiya, taking a small brown paper package wrapped with twine out of his robe and handed it to Naruto. Thanks Arrow Sennin, said the boy taking the package and ignored the grumbling from Jiraiya about youngest today. Now enjoy brat, I see you later. I have to met some who helping me with my research for my next book, said Jiraiya as he giggled perversely. Research? What that, and can I come? Asked Naruto since he did not understand and though it might be fun. Sorry brat, you can't, it grow up stuff, maybe next time when you're older, said Jiraiya quickly since even he had morals when it comes to taking little kids with him on his research. Besides, he knew that if did something like that, Tsunade would beat him within an inch of his life and have her slug summon Katsuyu melt off his balls with her acid. Okay, replied Naruto as we went off to open his present, while Jiraiya shunshined away. 10 minutes later in town. Jiraiya was in a small alley near the town local hot spring waiting for the person he had arranged to meet her. Soon enough a young short brown-haired man with brown eyes and wearing a white shirt and trousers came out of the entrance of the hot spring, and quickly ran over to the small alleyway that Jiraiya was waiting in. So did you get them? Asked Jiraiya eagerly. Yeah, I got them, but I nearly caught a few times when I was taking the photos, said the man holding up over 3 dozen photos of different young girls and women in the hot spring, wearing noting but towels or noting at all. The young man who took the photos was a towel boy who worked in the hot springs collecting the towels of the women after they had finished in the hot springs and gotten dress. Jiraiya had met the boy when he was in the town on his way to Suan house and quickly learned that the young man was a fan of his books, and he also learned that he worked in the local hot springs. So naturally Jiraiya made a deal with the young man where in return for a little payoff, the boy would take photos of all the different young and attractive ladies who went into the hot spring for Jiraiya. Jiraiya quickly grabbed the photos and started to look through them. He then began to grin perversely and developed a large nosebleed and began to drool a little. The young man coughed loudly to get Jiraiya's attention away from the photos and onto him. I believe Jiraiya-sama, you owe me something, since I held up my end of the deal, spoke the young man. You're right, I do, said Jiraiya as he then quickly took out another small brown paper package wrapped with twine and handed it to the young man, who took it eagerly and began to quickly rip open the package. Pleasure doing business with you, said Jiraiya as he began to walk away and look back at the photos, thinking about all the different types of inspiration these photos would give him. But before he could fully walk away, he was stopped by a sudden cry from the young man. Is this some kind of joke? Cried the young man angrily. What are you talking about? Asked Jiraiya as he turned back to the man. I mean, this isn't what we agreed upon, said the man holding up a book to Jiraiya's face. The book read, The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. Wait a minute, this is the book I gave Naruto for his birthday, but if this is it then that means the book I gave Naruto was, oh dear sweet Kami no. Thought Jiraiya in his mind as he realized what he had done and quickly snatched the book from the man and ran with a speed that would make Guy look slow even without his weights. All the while ignoring the angry cries of the young man about noting giving him what they had agreed upon. Several minutes later at Tsunade's home. As this was happening, Tsunade was sitting down and was about to get ready for a nice nap, while Shizune was finishing cleaning up in the kitchen and Tonton was lying down next to the chair she was sitting on. But before she could fully settle down, she suddenly heard a cry. Ka-chan, Ka-chan, where are you, Ka-chan? After which Naruto then came into the living room carrying a book in his hand. What's wrong, Naru-chan? Asked Tsunade. Ero Sennin gave me this book for my birthday, but I can't read it very well since there are lots of words on it that I can't understand, and the pictures of full of people doing funny things together, said the boy. Well, come over here, Naru-chan, and I read you the story, said Tsunade as Naruto went over to her and sat on her lap, while she began to read the page that Naruto had left open for her to read. Katara began to dress the wounds that Shin had after his fight with the Dark Warrior Ashi. As she dressed his wound, Shin suddenly turned around and caressed her face gently with his large hand. As he did, Katara then began to caress his chest gently with her small gentle hand. As they began to feel one another's body, Shin then suddenly grabbed hold of her chin, and kissed her deeply, pouring in all the passion he could muster and felt for her from the moment he first set eyes on her. At first Katara was caught by surprise by Shin's kiss, but she quickly got over it, and began to kiss Shin with just as much passion as he was and began to pour all her heart and emotions that she had into the kiss. As the kiss deepened, Shin began to explore Katara's body with his hands, where he then began to loosen her sash that was around her waist, after which he began to remove the upper portion of her kimono to reveal her. It was there that Tsunade stopped reading the book to her son and read it silently to herself of a minute or so, where she then realized what just she was about to read to her innocent baby. Tsunade then quickly skipped to a few pages ahead to where the pictures for the book were, and saw that what they were showing. She quickly covered her son's eyes so he could not see the images of the detail various adult images. Ka-chan, what wrong? Why aren't you reading the story? What's happening and why won't you let me see the picture? Asked the boy as he squirmed in his mother's arm and tried to get her hands off from covering his eyes, but Tsunade would not allow it. Tsunade then quickly turned to the cover of the book to see exactly what Jiraiya had given her son for his birthday, and what she had been reading to him, although she had an idea what it was. When she turned the book, she read the cover, Ika Ika Paradise, limited colored pictured edition, with author autograph, exactly what she had thought. That damn perverted excuse for a life form. I warned him what would happen to him if he tried to corrupt my Naru-chan and turn him into a pervert like him. When I get my hand on him, not even an entire army of medics will be able to heal him once I done with him. Though Tsunade furiously as she thought all the different ways he could torture and kill a certain toad pervert, she knew and thought about which would be the slowest and most painful way to torture and kill him. All the while as Tsunade was thinking of this, Naruto had finally gotten out of his mother hold and got her hands off his eyes. He tried to see the pictures in the book again but could not since his mother had closed the book. He then tried to get his mother attention, but she was too caught up in the different ways she would torture and kill Jiraiya to pay attention to him. And as if the heavens themselves were answering Tsunade's praise, Jiraiya suddenly appeared in the living. Naruto, where are you? I gave you the wrong bow, spoke Jiraiya panic-like, but stopped when he saw Naruto sitting on his mother's lap with her holding the book. It was then that Jiraiya knew he was too late and that he was dead man. When Jiraiya appeared, Tsunade slowly turned around to face Jiraiya, with a look in her eyes that was so frightening that it would have made the devil himself shit himself. The point was proven since Jiraiya nearly did so himself. She also had a smile on her face that was far too sweet, and made her look all the more sinister looking than their old teammate Orochimaru could ever look. Well, Jiraiya, what a coincidence, I was just thinking about you, said Tsunade all too sweetly, which made Jiraiya shiver in fear and wanted to run as far away as possible, but couldn't since he was frozen with pure terror. All the while as this was happened, Naruto had gotten off his mother lap when she stood up and was now watching what was happening since he did not really understand what was going on. Is there something wrong, Ero Sennin? Did you met the friend you said you were going to met for your research? Asked Naruto. Well, I don't kkk no w what your tt taking about Naruto, said Jiraiya nervously since he didn't want to get into any more trouble with Tsunade that he was in now. You know Ero Sennin, that friend that you said would help you for your research for your book, you even said that you take me with you next time, said Naruto, who had he noticed he would have seen the dark flames that were now sprouting from his mother's eyes, and Jiraiya about ready to wed himself, who was also silently cursing Naruto for opening his big mouth. It was after this revelation that Tsunade knew that her son was far too young to see the horrors that she was about to unleash upon Jiraiya and decided to call Shizune in to take Naruto away for a while. Is there something wrong, Tsunade-sensei? Asked Shizune as she came out of the kitchen to see a petrified Jiraiya who was sweating profoundly, and a sinister-looking Tsunade with an all-too-sweet smile on her face. Oh, noting Shizune, I was just wondering if you could take Naruto out to town for a little while I have a little chat with Jiraiya here about his choices in gifts, to Naru-chan here, replied Tsunade sweetly. When Tsunade had finished speak, Shizune just had a confused look over her face, since she did not understand what Tsunade was talking about. But as soon as Tsunade held up the Ika Ika book to Shizune, she realized what she meant. After which Shizune turned to glare angrily at Jiraiya for trying to turn her godson, little brother, nephew into a pervert. After glaring at the petrified Jiraiya for a minute or so, Shizune then turned and kneeled down to Naruto, who was still watching this in confusion. Naru-chan, how about you and I going downtown have some ramen at the restaurant in town? At this, Naruto face immediately lit up with excitement at having his favorite food, since his mom told him he could only have ramen once a week. Since she said it was good for him and that if he ate noting but that then it would stunt his growth. Yay, ramen, cried Naruto happily and was about to go with Shizune when he stopped and turned to Jiraiya and his mother. Ero Sennin, Ka-chan, aren't you coming with us? Asked the boy. Jiraiya, deciding that this was his best and only chance of escape, quickly came out of his petrified state. Sure thing, Naruto, and the ramen will be on me, spoke Jiraiya quickly and tired to run off to town so to avoid Tsunade beating. But before he could run away, Tsunade caught Jiraiya by the collar and kept him in place even despite the fact that he kept trying to run, but Tsunade's grip was iron tight and she just slammed Jiraiya down onto the floor hard. You go ahead, Naru-chan, Jiraiya and I are going to play a little game called Operation, said Tsunade with a sadistic smile on her face that would have scared even Orochimaru. Oh, okay, Ka-chan. Come on, Tonton, you can come too, said Naruto as he went off with Shizune, with Tonton getting up and crying, oink, and following after Naruto and Shizune. No. Wait, Naruto, take me with you too, screamed the pervert as his fingernails scratching up the floor as Tsunade dragged him into the next room and then throwing him into the corner of the room. After which the toad hermit began to pray for the heavens to take him now into their sweet embrace, but sadly they weren't listening right now and were just going to sit back and enjoy the show. As Tsunade's towering figure was standing over the cowering Jiraiya, who was hunched back against the corner wall, try to plead for mercy, they heard Naruto cry out as he left the house with Shizune. Have fun, Ka-chan, with Ero Sennin. Ku, oh. I will, Naru-chan, I will, chuckled Tsunade maniacally over the cowering Jiraiya. C-C, come on, Heim. It was an AA accident, honest, why you know me, pleaded Jiraiya as she tried to reason with Tsunade, but unfortunately for Jiraiya, Tsunade was not in a reasonable mood. Oh, I know you, Jiraiya, all too well, and it would be just like you to try and corrupt my sweet innocent little Naru-chan and become a pervert like you, said Tsunade, and she towered over Jiraiya like she was the Shinigami itself. Soon enough for miles around people could hear the terrified screams of Jiraiya as well as screams of pain as he screamed to the heavens. A few hours later Naruto, Tonton and Shizune would return from town and find Suan sitting down enjoying a drink of sake and what looked like some kind of deformed human. That was in a heap across from Tsunade, who barely even looked human anymore, and by the way it continued to groan in pain. It gave the impression that its very existence right now was full of noting but consistent pain and suffering. It was later on that they learned that the deformed creature was Jiraiya after Suan had finished with him. All in all, it was just another day with Tsunade's family. N.A. Well, at last that another chapter done. Hope you all enjoyed the chapter, since as I promised some of Naruto abilities have been revealed and as many had hoped. Naruto has Mokuden, not to mention his mother's chakra control skills. Please read and review and tell me what you think. Also, any and all suggestions are welcome, as if you have any I will listen top them and tell you what I think of them. Also note that flames are unwelcome, so if you don't like my story then don't read it, and if you do send any flames then they will be ignored. 2 years after Naruto had revealed his Mokuden abilities, Tsunade, Tonton, Shizune and Naruto were now staying in a small village in Oni no Kuni, Demon Country. The village was a quiet and small village that was positioned in a small valley with a large forest north of it, a medium-sized river that flowed gently down out of the valley south of it, and with crops and fields west of the village where the farmers grew their food for the village. The place had been a perfect spot for the group, since it was quiet and out of the way of most places, and the village had no real medic. Many of their old and young were suffering for a small disease that affected people with a low immune system, which resulted in them being bedridden and unable to eat properly for several weeks. But thankfully when Tsunade arrived the problem was resolved in a matter of a few days. As the people in the village were busy doing their daily activities, they suddenly heard loud explosions and could see large dust clouds coming from the other edges of the forest north of the village. Normally if the villagers saw this they would have been concerned about it and believed that they were under some kind of attack. But they had grown used to seeing such thing after the first few weeks of the arrival of Tsunade, Tonton, Shizune and Naruto, although they did not know that it was Tsunade since she still had her genjutsu henge over her and Shizune, and they went by different names. Since this had come to be a common occurrence to outside the village at this time, they had learned that at this time Tsunade would train her son Naruto in her special training exercise at this time. With Suan and Naruto, dodge, shouted Suan as she threw a massive dodge ball at Naruto, who barely dodged it. Naruto had grown a good bit over the time. He was still quite skinny, but despite that he was quite strong for his age, thanks to his training, and had lots of energy. Naruto wore a short-sleeved green shirt, with black short pants and brown sandals. This type of training had been a common thing to be seen going on between Naruto and Tsunade in the past few months. Since when she first saw that Naruto had inherited her natural flawless chakra control, she hoped that with this training Naruto would gain her superhuman strength. Naturally, when Jiraiya and Shizune first heard Tsunade saying that she was now going to have Naruto go through her special training, they became very concerned for Naruto's safety and well-being. But fortunately Naruto had two things going for him. One was that thanks to his high stamina and all the running around that he did when he was younger had given him excellent reflexes and good speed, for a kid his age, so that he could dodge the balls quickly without getting hit and not get tired from doing it for several hours. The other was the only real side effect that he got from having the Kyuubi inside of him. The Kyuubi had given him a quick healing factor, where Naruto could recover from chakra exhaustion very quickly, and most wounds he would heal within minutes if not a few hours, depending of how serious the wound was. This had helped Naruto greatly since it allowed him to survive Tsunade's training with little effect, especially when it came to taijutsu training with his mother. Since when Tsunade did taijutsu training with Naruto, she used her full power on Naruto, where he mainly dodge and try and counterattack at the same time, while wearing specially designed gravity weight seals that Jiraiya given him to wear most of the time. Needless to say, Naruto usually returned home with broken bones of a lot of bruises, but regardless of them the training was working, since Naruto's speed was increasing dramatically and his taijutsu style was improved as well. Tsunade even stated that the way he was going Naruto would soon have a firm grasp of her superhuman strength, even though it would still be a couple of more years before he could ever be able to use it to the same level as she could. For several hours Tsunade threw and threw hundreds of dodge balls at her son, where the dodge balls would often explode by the sheer power of the throne, when it hit the ground or a tree. After a while of this Naruto was starting to get tired of always dodging and decided to strike back. Soon after when Tsunade threw another dodge ball and shouted, "Dodge!" Naruto leapt into the air at the incoming dodge ball and channeled all the chakra he could gather. As the dodge ball was about to hit him Naruto did mid-air spin kick and hit the dodge ball with all the strength he could mustered with his chakra-enhanced kick. When Naruto kicked the ball the power he put into the kick was so great that it overpowered Tsunade's throw. After which Naruto's kick blasted the ball right back at Tsunade with twice the velocity that she threw it with. She was so shocked by what Naruto had done that she had barely been able to dodge the ball, which exploded once it hit that spot that Tsunade had been a second ago. After Tsunade had narrowly dodged the ball she turned to look at her son, who was somehow still standing after putting so much of his remaining chakra into the kick and was breathing heavily from exhaustion. Incredible. Even after constantly dodging all my throws non-stop for most of the morning, he still had enough strength and power to overpower one of my throws at full power. I knew. He was slowly getting better at being able to use my strength, but still. I never thought he have enough control over it to be able to block it and hit it back at me with twice of much force as what I threw at him. Not to mention he's still able to stand up after putting so much power into that kick, after doing something like he should be dead on his feet and unconscious on the ground, thought Tsunade in shock but quickly got over it and a large smirk appeared on her face, but then again he is, my son after all. All right Naru-chan, that enough for today, spoke Tsunade, after which she then started to seal away the large bag that held the remaining dodge balls. But, Ka-chan, I can still key, keep going, said Naruto tiredly. That may be true Naru-chan, but remember what I said about pushing yourself too far. Now come over here so I can heal you, said Tsunade, where her son was too tried to argue and went over to her to be healed. After a little while, Naruto was fully healed and was itching to start training some more, but his mother wouldn't allow it. But Ka-chan, why can't I? Since you said the more I train the stronger I get, and I want to get as strong as you, Ero Sanin and the Yondaime, said Naruto. Naruto knew a lot about the Yondaime thanks to all the stories that Jiraiya told him about, although Tsunade didn't really like it, since she was still angry at Minato for turning their son into a Jinchuriki. But Naruto was still unaware of the fact that the Yondaime was his father, since both Tsunade and Jiraiya had decided not to tell Naruto until he was ready, in case he accidentally blurted it out to someone. Whenever Naruto asked about his father, the subject was always changed. Naruto also didn't know about the Kyuubi being sealed into him either, since like with the knowledge of his father it was decided to keep secret for the same reason. Yes Naru-chan, that true, but if we kept training you be too tried to do your studies with Shizune, replied Tsunade. But I like training more, whined Naruto. Now Naru-chan, you know that your studies with Shizune are just as important as your other training, and if you want to be as good at healing as I am, then you have to study hard, said Tsunade, which convinced her son to agree and start to head home. During the last year Naruto had become very eager to learn about being a medic, which was a dramatic change from when Tsunade had first hired a few months after his 6th birthday. Since when Tsunade first hired to get Naruto to study to learn to be a medic, Naruto was not interested, since he found all the studying boring and wanted to either play with Tonton or play other kids or train so that he kick butt, Naruto's words, like Jiraiya or Minato. But that all changed when Naruto was 7, when he found a wounded rabbit in the forest near one of their houses that they had stayed in. When Naruto found the rabbit, it had been just attacked by a wild eagle, which had been scared off when it saw Naruto come over. When Naruto saw that the rabbit had been badly hurt, he had become greatly distressed since he hated seeing animals hurt, where he went to his mother carrying the injured animal to her in hopes that she could do something. Thankfully, despite not being a vet, Tsunade knew what to do since she still knew enough about most living creature biology. When Naruto saw how easily his mother had helped to heal the injured rabbit, he had become interested. After that, he decided to ask his mother if he could go with her when she went to heal people, which she happily agreed to. During the trips, Naruto became more and more interested in medical jutsu, since he saw how his mother helped so many people with it and how happy she made the people she healed as well as their families. It was then after his mother had healed a young girl, whom Naruto had befriended earlier, who had been seriously injured in an accident when she was playing with other children, that Naruto told his mother he wanted to be trained as a medic, much to his mother's joy, since he told her that he wanted to be a butt-kicking combat medic, where he would kick load of bad guys' butt, and help heal people who are hurt at the same time. After Tsunade heard Naruto's little decree, she had agreed to train Naruto to be a medic, even though it wasn't exactly what she had wanted. Suan knew it was the best she could get. After Naruto decided to train to be a medic, Tsunade started to train Naruto in medical ninjutsu and how to use his chakra to help heal others. Shizune also helped by teaching Naruto about how each part of the body works and what to do if certain things happen, like if a person had broken arm or if they were suffer a heart attack. It had been difficult at first, since Naruto found it difficult to try and remember the names of the different organs or bones and what they do for the body. Even despite Naruto's love of reading things and trying to learn from simple easy-to-read medical books for beginners, he still had trouble focusing on what he was trying to learn. But Shizune had found a unique way to help teach Naruto. For example, putting different cartoon-like faces, as well as imprinting thoughts and feelings onto the pictures of each organ and body, so to help make it both fun and easier for Naruto to focus on them and remember them. She also made up different rhymes or little songs to help Naruto remember the names of the body parts and what they were connected to and do, as well as what to do if with certain injuries happened. Tsunade had naturally been skeptical at first when Shizune had suggested it, but when Shizune applied her idea to help teach Naruto, Tsunade soon saw that the teaching method was working perfectly, since Naruto improved greatly in his medical nin training. Tsunade herself praised Shizune for her teaching skills. She even stated that Shizune had a gift in helping to teach children and helping them learn. This of course caused the young women to blush bright red at her sensei praise, since it was not too often that Tsunade would praise someone. But even despite Naruto growing progress in his medical training, he was still a long way from being able to heal people properly, even with just simple injuries or illnesses. Also, Naruto was now learning about fuinjutsu, sealing techniques, from Jiraiya, where he was teaching Naruto how to seal simple things into scrolls like a kunai, after which when he returned, Jiraiya would then start to teach him other slightly more advanced sealing techniques. After a little while, Tsunade and Naruto reached their small house that they were staying in for now. When they were about to go in, Shizune quickly came of the house with a slightly concerned look on her face. "Tsunade-sensei, I'm glad that you're here. There is a man here looking for you to help heal someone," said Shizune. "So, what is the problem with that? A lot of people have come here looking for me when they needed to be healed or someone else to be healed," replied Tsunade, since it was common enough for it to happen with her as a healer. "No, he not looking for you, he looking for you," spoke Shizune.